LLCs. Gosh, how do you form those things? They seem super complicated. Everybody talks about them. And now, for some reason, every email list you're on, they're sending you all this stuff saying, hey, you need to use this special company or whatever and pay hundreds or thousands of dollars to get LLCs formed or corporations or whatever it is that you need for your business. And some things are just too simple to do. And we're going to talk about all that stuff today, how to form your own LLC. So you guys get you another refill on the coffee or whatever it is you're having, and we'll be back in 45 seconds. Good morning, Deed Grabbers. Welcome to Goat Talk for April 21st. We're coming to you from sunny Apollo Beach, Florida. It's a beautiful day today. We've got a great show today. We're going to talk all about LLCs. Before we get started with that, if you guys are on YouTube, we would like to ask you to subscribe to our channel. I'm going to get this thing working here eventually. Sub2deals.com/YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell. We have a lot of videos that we release every week. It's going to teach you all kind of stuff, all for free. Let's see. Share our live stream with another investor. Take a screenshot, share it on your wall, invite other people over where they can watch and learn as well. We'd love to meet as many of your friends as possible. And if you're interested in the absolute best, most affordable training on creative finance and Sub2, check us out at $7 coaching. $7 a month, man. That's like a Starbucks coffee. Okay. We're going to talk about LLCs today, and we're not going to make a whole bunch of announcements. I'm going to go ahead and bring Bill in. Good morning, Mr. Walston.
How you doing, buddy?
Man, we're finer than frog hair here in Florida today.
I hear you.
We're going to talk about LLCs.
I know exactly what you said.
Finer than frog. Listen,
means.
I told that to a probably 21-year-old at the grocery store yesterday, and she didn't know what in the heck I was talking about.
I'll bet.
But yeah, she just didn't get it, but I knew you would. So LLCs, gosh, before we get started, let us just some disclosures here today. We're not attorneys. And we're not giving anybody legal advice, okay? Yep. We're going to talk about best practices and based on our experience and what we know. Now, I've been doing this 23 years in August. And how many hundred years have you been doing this?
Oh, about 4 decades, buddy.
4 decades. Okay, so 60 plus years between us. I have formed an LLC or two, and I know you have as well. And
a couple, maybe.
Yeah, and most people that are here know I have a 9th grade education, and I made it. I lived through it. It was okay, and I haven't lost now. I had a divorce that was pretty painful one time, but the LLC couldn't have protected me there, I don't think. But anyway, otherwise, as far as I've been sued several times. I've been in front of a judge several times, and I've always been in pretty good shape. So I guess we did okay. Let's get started, guys. If you have questions, please give us those in the comments. We would love to answer your questions. Gosh, we've already got a bunch of comments. Good morning, Matt. Good to see you. Tammy, good to see you here. Corey says, morning, sunshine. Well, hey, good to see you too. Gosh, Matt, Jeff, good to see you, Jeff. Carlos is in here. Carla's here. Tammy Crusen's here. Hey, good to see all of you guys. You guys take a screenshot, invite your friends. Let's get a crowd in here. We want to answer a bunch of questions today. I think Matt has a question right off the bat. Let's get over there and see what we got here.
Now, one question we probably will get is where's the other Bill, right?
Yeah, where's the other Bill this morning? He's
a lazy butt. He probably isn't out of bed yet.
No, he's been in Florida for the last few
Oh,
days.
has he really? Cool.
Yeah, he did a 2-day thing down here and across the state. Actually, it was 4 or 5 hours away. So
Oh, wow.
we talked to him. Yeah, but so he's a little bit. We should do that. We
I
talked a
think
little
we
bit
should
about.
too.
I think we should do something on a somewhat regular basis where we get the 3 bills together, 2 bills and a will or
Two
whatever it
Bills
was.
and a William.
That's right.
That works.
Yeah. So Matt
People,
said, go ahead.
I said people's minds would explode.
Oh, wouldn't they? Yeah, wouldn't they? I think it'd be great though.
Well, we might have to get Jody to sit in and interpret for Bill.
You think so? I don't know.
Bless his heart.
Yeah, he's pretty fluent in the Southern, so I think.
Oh, is it? Okay.
He might make it. He might.
I'm sorry. Let's get Matt. Let's get Matt's questions answered.
Let's get to Matt, but let's start out by saying this, guys. Everybody has to do what works for them, okay? Right. But we just want to let y'all know that it's not that complicated to set up your own LLC. There are some important steps, and to be quite honest with you, a lot of investors skip a couple of crucial steps.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk about those today. So let's go ahead. Y'all drop your questions in here and we'll get them as we go. The hard part I had was I lived in Colorado, but set up an LLC in Nevada and couldn't get a bank account set up. How do you deal with that?
Good question. That is one of the things that most people have difficulty with. There are promoters out there who say, oh, yeah, you got to have a Nevada LLC. Oh, yeah, you got to have a Wyoming LLC. Now, I think they have their place, right? But it's very difficult to have a Wyoming LLC and then try to get a bank account set up in another state, okay? Usually, if I have someone who's using a Nevada LLC or Wyoming LLC or something like that, those are holding companies.
Right.
And they don't have bank accounts, right? So you still would have another LLC, added cost, right? You'd have to have another LLC in the state that you're conducting business in. And that LLC would be the one to get a bank account, right? And I think some people think that, oh yeah, I've got a Nevada LLC. That's going to keep me from paying taxes in Florida, or that's going to keep me from paying taxes in North Carolina, right? It doesn't. You don't get out of state taxes. You're going to get taxed where that property is. So my thing is if you're going to use a LLC for real estate investing, it needs to be formed where the property is. Right.
Yeah, the out-of-state LLC thing is more appropriate for, I think, intangible things or services. But if you're buying in a specific state, if that property is sitting in Florida, you need a Florida LLC to do business.
That's right. And one thing that Matt could do, maybe we can get, this might be a workaround if he insists on doing it that way, is find a bank that is located both in Nevada and in Colorado. Okay. And sometimes you can do the Nevada bank account. You can set it up in Nevada, right? You can have a registered agent set it up for you and then do your banking in the state of Colorado. They're not going to care about that. You can make your deposits there and stuff like that, but the bank account would have to be set up in Nevada.
Well, that's what my producer just said to me. What about a national bank that's got branches all over? And now you can do banking. You can take a picture of a check if that's what you've got, and of course, bank wires. That's how most people do business and everything. So, I mean, actually having to visit a bank, gosh, I've only been inside of a bank once or twice in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Well, the problem you have now sometimes is that when you get ready to set up a bank account, you got to give them everything plus your underwear size in order to get one set up. So you got to, you've got paperwork you got to do. You got to do proof of ID, things like that. So the way that most of my clients had been getting bank accounts and things like that set up is they have to do it through the registered agent. And the registered agent sets it up in the town. So if you have a Nevada registered agent, sometimes you can convince them that you need to have them set up the bank account for you. Okay. Other
Mhm.
times you can find a bank that will let you set up the bank account and you send proof of ID, like a fax of your bank account number and stuff like
Right.
that. They can do it. Okay.
Right.
You just have to find one that's going to be willing to do it.
Right. And I want to say that I saw somewhere recently here in the last couple of weeks, and this has been a big deal, where some of these services are charging $50 or $65 a month for a registered agent.
Crazy.
And really,
Crazy.
all you have to do is have someone you know
Mhm.
that lives in the state
Right.
be your registered agent.
Well, I know we're going to address this a little bit later on, and I may be getting ahead of myself, but there is a company that I like
Mhm.
for people. Now, there are a couple of ways you can set up your own LLC. You can
Right.
go through the Secretary of State's office. Okay.
Right.
But if you're going to need a registered agent and you don't want to be that registered agent
Right.
yourself and you don't have anybody with you, there's a really good company called InkFile, INCFILE.com.
Right.
They will charge you and you get the basic stuff. Now they'll try to upsell the heck out of you.
Right.
Okay. But they have a basic service that just sets up the LLC for you,
Mhm.
gets the articles of organization. They only charge the state fee, whatever the state filing fee is. So you'd have to
Right.
pay that anyway. Then they
Right.
will act as your registered agent for the year
Mhm.
for free.
Right.
Okay. So you can get a registered agent, and that saves some of the anonymity
Mhm.
of the company. And I know we can answer that a little bit further, but there are ways, guys, that you don't have to act as your own registered agent. And
Right.
then after that year, it's $125 a year for a registered agent.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what we used to call chump change type
Right.
thing, right?
Right.
To pay for the security of not having your name all over the place.
Right. Because if your name is on it, everything's so searchable now. When I got started in real estate investing, it wasn't that way. It wasn't that simple. But
Right.
now, I mean, a few clicks, and if you're the registered agent or you're showing there, then I mean, there's no anonymity at all
None
with that.
whatsoever. I pulled
Right.
up some this morning to show my client. Said, "Look, there you are."
Okay, Farouk's here. Good morning. Kevin, good to see you. I've got Mark here. Phil Smith, good morning, Billy Goats. Good to see you. Brad's here. Good to see you. There's Jeff again. Good morning, guys. Melissa, Missy, she says, hey, good to see you. Let's see. Wow, got a bunch of people in here. Hey, wouldn't even let me set up a bank account. Yeah, Matt, I know. Well, we're going to fix all that. Hey, Luke, let's see. What's Luke's comment? Are some gurus overselling the series LLCs? I'm sure you've got a strong opinion on this one.
I do.
Yep.
I think series LLCs are a good deal. They have their place. Unfortunately, there are some gurus who charge you for the series. Okay, which they shouldn't be doing. But yeah, I think that series LLCs work pretty good because you can use the parent as the holding company. And then every time you buy a new property, if it's in the same state that the series is in, right? Every time you buy a new property, all you have to do is add to the series. Okay? And you don't have to do new filings or anything like that. It just kind of adds to that series. So it makes it very simple. I don't use them myself that much just because my stuff has been set up before series LLCs ever started. There are some states that do not recognize series LLCs. So, they're not that popular everywhere. But yeah, I agree with Luke that there are gurus who do oversell those things.
Well, let me ask you this, just for clarity purposes here. And when you talk about states not recognizing something, that doesn't mean you can't use it. It means if you're sued is when it will be tested.
That's correct. And the other thing is, and another thing by not recognizing it is the states do not allow them in their state. You cannot have a series LLC in every state.
Okay. You don't have
so there are a few states, and I don't remember, honestly, I don't, because I don't use them so frequently. I believe Texas has Series LLC. Pretty sure North Carolina does. Tennessee, I think, does now. But I haven't checked all the states because I just don't use them and I don't recommend them. So
Right.
you can go to the state that you are thinking about doing an LLC in and just say Series LLC Georgia, Series LLC Tennessee, and you will see if they're accepted in that state.
Right. Going back to something you just mentioned, talking about, the Series LLC and each time you buy a property. Now, some people subscribe to the one property per LLC thing. I've always had a little bit different approach.
I have to.
I feel like an LLC is for asset protection. The only thing at risk if that LLC is sued is whatever's in the LLC.
Yep.
If I've got, and let's just say my risk tolerance is $250,000. So if I've got 5 properties and they each have about in my mind, they have $50,000 in profit. The deal does. 5's going to be my limit. Then I'm going to move on, form another LLC, put the next however many 2, 3, 4, 5 properties in that, then form subsequents. Is that what you agree with?
That's what I do. I totally agree with that. Yeah, we look more, when I say we, I mean the two of us, because we've chatted about it before. We look at the equity we want to protect.
Right.
And that's what we go by.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some advantages of having an LLC in different properties. And if you only have 3 or 4 properties, yeah, that might be fine.
Right.
But if you've got a large portfolio, it makes it difficult to control each one of those. Right. Mm-hmm. And I know some specific asset protection folks who stand on their head every time I've said, and I've had clients who go to them and they are in strict contrast to what I say. I say, hey, just protect your equity. Oh, no, blank, blank has told me I have to have this many LLCs. I said, well, yeah, think about it. How much they going to charge you each time they set up one of those new LLCs? Just asking.
Yep, that's right.
It's a nightmare. It really is an annual report nightmare. So I think that sometimes more is not always better.
Mm-hmm. Right. Tammy said, when you do virtual deals in multiple states, you need an LLC for each state. Yes, Tammy, at least one per state. You need an LLC in every state that you do business, at least one. Depends on how many properties you got if you do it the way Bill and I are talking about.
Right. Well, and I don't disagree with that totally. But my thing is if you're just wholesaling a property, okay, I'm not sure if you would have to have an LLC registered in that state to wholesale a property. That would be the only difference.
I'm thinking about hanging on to it for a little bit, or keeping it.
There you go. Yes.
Right.
If you're going to hang on to it, or you're going to keep it, totally agree. There needs to be an LLC in that state to do that. But if you're just going in and you're assigning a contract, or you're flipping a property, like boom, buy, sell, and it's done in a week, right? Then I don't think you need one. And somebody says, well, what about taxes? Well, quite honestly, I'm sure that the state of Georgia would be happy to receive my tax return, even if I was not domiciled in that state.
Yeah, they're not going to turn it down.
That's right.
That's for sure. Okay. Matt says, cool parties, you get a registered agent and virtual address for $75 a year. And that's what you're talking about?
It's probably similar. The one that I'm talking about, the fee is a little bit more than that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Matt, let us know who you're talking about, that it's $75 a year.
Right. And I think that's probably just the registered agent and the address. Okay. Yeah, it's physical address. So that means that they are not helping you file the LLC. They're just offering a registered agent.
Okay. Now, this service that'll help you file it for, I think you said the $125
Inc.
a
file.
year.
All right. So in Tennessee, the fee to file a LLC is $300. That's minimum fee. Okay. Right. So if you go to Inc. file, they will ask you to start filing the tax return, or if to start filing tax returns, got that on the brain, to start submitting an application for the state, right? For them to file for your LLC. So they'll ask you all the business questions, et cetera, et cetera. They'll try to upsell you to getting the operating agreement and the EIN number in the form 2553, all that crap that you
Right.
do not need to get from them, right? So you turn it down, and at the end of the day, the fee is something like $308.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they will be the registered agent for the rest of the year, or
Right.
for a year. Okay.
Mhm.
So they'll actually get your articles for you. It would have cost you $300 if you went to the state site.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you do it with them, it costs an extra $8, but you've got a registered agent for the
Mhm.
year. Then when
Right.
it gets time to renew, they will ask you if you want them to continue as your registered agent. If so, they'll charge you about $125, and you
Right.
still get to use their
Right.
address.
Right. But let's see, we got a couple more questions. I want to go into just what a new investor can do to the steps involved in doing that. How do we set up an LLC to keep anonymity?
Okay.
Now, that's going to be having somebody else be the registered agent
Right.
for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's it, really. Then your names.
Yeah, it is. And it also depends on, in some states, if you're going to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can choose to set up, usually when you're filing, they'll always ask who is filing the form.
Right.
Okay, and you can file as an organizer, you can file as a manager, or you can file as a member. Those three options are not offered in every single state. They're offered in most states, though. So
Right.
you'd have to take a look at what your state's asking.
Mm-hmm.
If the option is given to file as an organizer, I always say file as an organizer.
Mm-hmm.
Always be
Right.
filling it out as the organizer, because the organizer can be anybody. They don't tie the organizer to who owns the LLC.
Mm-hmm.
It's best if you aren't on there at all, but if you have to be, file as an organizer. Have a
Right.
spouse, file as an organizer. Put your
Mhm.
brother's name in as the organizer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, whatever.
Right.
And then the information will come back to you. Now you do have to list a registered agent.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to have a physical address for that registered agent. Cannot use post office box
Right.
in most states. Okay, some states may vary.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use in-laws, you can use a best friend, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So that your name is not on there as registered agent. Okay. Then you need to look to see whether your state allows for manager managed or member managed LLCs. Okay. If your state allows for manager managed, I always check that box. And the
Mhm.
reason for that is the manager fills out all the information and the member information is never requested. They don't ask who the members are.
Right.
Okay. If you don't use manager managed, then they'll want you to list the members
Mm-hmm.
of the LLC. So one way to keep the members from being listed is to choose a manager managed
Right.
LLC.
Okay. Great. Let's see, Matt. Wouldn't that get expensive to form so many LLCs with 5 properties per one? One LLC in Nevada is $350 a year. You know, the cost varies from state to state. Some states
does.
are $50 or less, and in
Right.
California is what, 500?
No,
800.
800.
800. That's right. They're the highest.
800. They are one of the they're the highest one in the states.
But then you've got some states.
Yes, it gets expensive, which is why we say you don't need one of them. You know, you don't need that many LLCs. Matt,
Right.
think of this. What if you had those 5 properties in a separate LLC?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
Well, think about this too, Matt. Some states have an initial filing fee, but then there's no recurring fees. You just have to file your little form every year. Texas, I think, is like that.
Yep.
You don't have to pay a fee every year. It's just
And
a one-time cost.
And there's some, though, that do require an annual renewal.
Right.
You have to re-up every year.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be careful that that is done.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the problem that I run into when I'm trying to clean up some of my clients' LLC stuff. Right? Because that's one of the things that I do with my clients. We look at how your LLC was filed. We make sure you've got all the proper documentation. And I found one when I was talking to a client a couple of weeks ago, and they said, okay, here's my articles of organization. Looked at the articles of organization. The LLC was probably about 10 years old, right? So I said, okay, let's check to make sure your annual reports have been filed. He said, annual reports? And I said, yeah. He said, what did I have to do? I said, oh crap. Okay. Went to the state, and his LLC had been administratively dissolved 7 years ago. He didn't even have an LLC and didn't know it.
Right.
Which was the sad thing. Okay, had no idea that he was no longer. And I said, dude, you have absolutely no protection whatsoever.
Right.
I said, not only do you not have protection, which can happen when you don't have with an LLC. I said, you don't even have an LLC.
Yep, and didn't even know.
And he didn't know he didn't have one.
Right. Right. You've got to put that stuff, like, it's actually on our Google Calendar. Yeah, when you have to go back in.
Well, here's the other thing. They usually, you usually get a notice from the state that your annual report is due. Okay. And a lot of times people just look at those and they treat them like IRS notices and just toss them, because I have clients who do that.
Right.
Okay. I find that a lot of people, once they have their articles of organization, that 1-page document, maybe 2,
right?
Okay, they think they're done.
Yep,
that's all they got to do, and they are totally protected from whatever happens. Hate to tell you this, you're not. Most LLCs are totally worthless because they're not maintained like they should be.
Yeah,
and especially in Florida. Okay. And people ask, say, well, why do you say just in Florida? I said, because a single member LLC, right, has only the one member,
right,
treated as a sole proprietorship. What happens with a sole proprietorship? What is a sole proprietorship as an entity? Okay, you are the entity. And did you know there are judges in the state of Florida that totally ignore that there is an LLC there because it's a single member LLC? And the LLC has not been maintained properly. And the attorney against the guy who's trying to sue the LLC member, he just says, Your Honor, this guy hasn't treated this business like a business. Okay, it's him, right? He's the only one. He doesn't even have a LLC checking account. Right. That whoever that is going to get screwed. Right. Because they're going to have no liability protection whatsoever. Right.
There's a lot more involved than just going onto the Secretary of State website and filling out some paperwork and sending them a check. If you had to guess, I'm talking about people that investors you've talked to or met and talked about this, what percentage of them don't have an operating agreement?
What percentage of them don't have one? I think the percentage that don't have an operating agreement is actually lower than what we would think.
Oh, yeah?
And here's why. If you go to the bank and want to borrow money on a property, first thing they're going to do is ask you where your operating agreement is. Now, what I will say is the number of investors that scramble around trying to get an operating agreement that they never had in place before is very high.
Yeah, Jody could tell us a thing or two about that. She didn't want me to tell that story. When she got her first sub-2 a couple of years ago, she actually, I think you were involved in this conversation. Actually, she was trying to, she's ready to go to close and collect, 5-figure paycheck, right?
Yep.
And the title company asked for the operating agreement for the LLC, and she's on the phone with you and me. What's that? Yep.
I remember that.
Yeah,
and
that's
so,
right.
Now that happens a lot, William. I mean, it really does.
Right.
Because they're all right. So let's say we have an investor who bought a sub-2 property, an investor named Jody. Okay, she didn't go and borrow money for that property, so she didn't run into anybody who asked her for an operating agreement, right? So she didn't have to worry about it. But you try to close with a title company and you don't have an operating agreement, you're up the creek, because they will ask you for one.
Yeah, just that little few pieces of paper standing between you and payday.
Yep. They will ask you for one. And I will tell you something else too. There are some, well, this happened in North Carolina, and it happened with someone that I knew who was not a client at the time. They are now. She went in to sell a property, and they went to check, and it's the same thing. They wanted to get a certificate of existence. Okay, and somebody says, well, what's a certificate of existence? Well, a certificate of existence shows that your LLC is still active,
Right.
right? Because you can take in articles of organization from 10 years ago, but that doesn't mean you still have an
Yeah.
LLC.
From your other client that hadn't had one in 7 years.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So when they asked for the certificate of existence, what they were doing was checking to make sure that the LLC still existed.
Right.
Right. So you have to make sure that paperwork is there.
Okay. So Mark asked a question, why not just have everything in a land trust with an LLC as a beneficiary? And that's because, and I know you know better than this, Mark, land trusts don't offer asset protection.
Right.
They offer privacy. Now that's a great additional layer to get to the LLC because no one knows who the beneficial interest of the trust is. But it doesn't take the place of an LLC.
Right. Now, you do get some liability protection from the LLC as a beneficiary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I do have a lot of clients who use trusts.
Right.
Okay. And the beneficiary is their LLC.
Right.
Okay. And that's helpful. It does add that extra layer of protection. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But and you can do that, right? And that would decrease the number of LLCs that you had to have if you set it up that way. Mm-hmm. But Wooten's absolutely right. A trust does not give you asset protection.
Yeah,
none whatsoever.
Right.
So the protection comes from the beneficiary being an LLC, but you still have to maintain that LLC properly.
Right. If they know who they're coming after, they know who they're coming after. But if it's just somebody that wants to sue, or they want to find out who the owner of that property is, if it's in a trust, that's a really good thing, especially if your trustee has a name like Smith or Jones and isn't around. That can make things really
different in another state even sometimes.
Yeah. And your tenant or whoever's occupying that property makes their payment to a servicing company or your bookkeeper or whoever, as many things as you can put in between you and the actual property. That's a good thing. Okay. So Matt asked the question, what is a must-have in the operating agreement?
Operating agreements are pretty standard.
Mm-hmm.
They are pretty much boilerplate, which is the problem with some of them. You do need a section that states that the LLC is formed under whatever the state's Limited Liability Company Act is. That's usually a formality that it says at the top. But some of the things that you need to cover in there is the biggest thing is your business purpose. Mm-hmm. Okay, because there you can show your intent to be an investor in your business. You can tell what properties you can invest in, what properties you don't invest in, what's going to be done with proceeds when you sell a property. A lot of people don't know that there are 11 exceptions to the flipping rule, okay, that will let you still hold investor status. One of those is selling a property for working capital. One of those is to form a don't call it a slush fund, but an emergency fund for making repairs on other properties in your portfolio. Okay, those are specific reasons that Internal Revenue Service will say, "Oh, okay, you can still be an investor. This is not a dealer transaction." Mm-hmm. Okay, but you ought to lay those out in your operating agreement so that you can point to the IRS if you're ever audited. Right, and we get back to our old favorite saying: "It's a moot point if you're not audited."
Right.
But if you are, you've covered your butt because the Internal Service might look at a transaction and say, hey, you bought this property, you held it for like 2 months to rehab it, then you sold it. Why did you do that? Well, you can go to your operating agreement. It says right here that I can sell a property in order to have money to make repairs on other properties in my portfolio. Oh, okay, type thing, right?
Right.
But those are things that IRS is going to look at. They want to make sure that you are not self-proclaiming to be a dealer. So if you have in your business purpose to buy and sell real estate for a profit, you're dead right from the start because that's clear dealer intent.
Yeah. And we don't want to be classified as a dealer.
No.
Or have our transactions classified as dealer.
Right. And some other things that you would have always, and again, it's pretty much boilerplate, but you have to have you got to tell what your tax status is going to be. Are you going to be taxed as a proprietorship? You're going to be taxed as an S corporation. That's mentioned in an operating agreement. The laws that you're going to be governed under, like if it's a LLC in the state of North Carolina, you would say it's governed by the laws in the state of North Carolina. You list the members in the operating agreement. That is a place where you do have to have the members listed because they have to adopt, right? Which is why you're happy that the operating agreement isn't filed with the state.
Right.
Okay. It's a private document, just like a trust document. You only have to pull it out, like to give to a lender or somebody like that, or if it's asked for by the Internal Revenue Service. So those are some things that need to be clarified.
Right.
And I will tell you, the operating agreements that you get from some of these places that will set up your organization for you, and we will give you your operating agreement, and it's included in the $5,000 price we're charging you, right? And it's not worth the paper it's printed on. You need to know someone who understands real estate and deals with real estate investors and tax consequences of real estate investors and asset protection for real estate investors. To kind of review your operating agreements and make sure that they cover your butt.
Right. Most investors, in my experience, you tell me if this is the same, I know you deal with a lot of different situations, are going to file single member LLCs.
A lot of them will.
Right. Okay.
And we recommend that they don't.
Right. Okay. And why is that?
Okay. My thing with my clients is we want to get everything we can off of your personal tax return.
Right.
You know, it's clunked up. The Schedule C, which is a single member LLC, okay, and it rolls up to either a Schedule C or a Schedule E. Those are the two most highly audited forms that there are. Okay, so I recommend that if you're holding properties, you try to have your LLC taxed as a partnership. Okay, and if you're flipping properties, it's either going to be a partnership where it's active income, or if you're making $50,000 or more net operating income a year, it's treated as an S corporation. Now, this is what I recommend that fits for most of my clients. And they say, well, what does that do? Well, number one, it pulls all that clutter. Let's say you got 15 rental properties. Okay, if you're doing a single member LLC that's disregarded, you've got 15 properties. You can only put 3 on a Schedule E. So you got 5 Schedule E's that you have to do, cluttering up your tax return. Okay. Can you imagine going into a bank and wanting to get a loan on that? Okay. And they have to dig through all that information. But what if you have a partnership that has all those 15 properties listed on the partnership tax return, and William gets a K1 that just gives the dollar amount, and on his tax return it just shows, you know, XYZ partnership, and you show the money amount in there, right? Doesn't clutter up your tax return. Another thing that people don't realize, if you go to a lender, William, they're going to loan you on your income. How do they compute the amount of income that's included in your debt to income ratio? Do you know how much they give you off of rental properties?
How much they give you off of rental properties?
Okay, so you know, all right. So when you go in to get a loan, they compute your debt to income ratio.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So when they look at your rents, the amount of income that they allow you to count in that debt to income ratio is usually 75%.
Right.
Okay. Did you know if they look at the back of a Schedule E where K1 information is, they allow 100% of that income? Which is another reason that they like investors, and investors have K1s. Right. Okay. That's just the way the rule works.
Yeah. Partnerships always remind me, and I don't want to go down a rabbit trail here, but they remind me of when I first learned about charging orders. And phantom income. Which is a really, really cool
Which is a wonderful thing.
Oh, man. Just the idea that somebody that sues you and gets a judgment or a charging order,
they have to report
then they have to pay taxes on money that you're just leaving in your business. I mean, that
they can't take. Yep.
And
that's called COPE, a COPE, charging order protection.
Right.
And most LLCs allow for that.
Mhm.
A LLC tax as a partnership definitely
Right.
allows for that.
Mhm.
Some single member LLCs, disregarded,
Mhm.
allow for that. But that's what I was talking about, the danger sometimes of a single member LLC. Okay.
Right.
Because the judge ignores it.
Mhm. Okay. Well, listen, we've got a ton of questions, but before we get to these, I hope we get to these today. But before we do, I want to run through the steps
Okay.
that a typical new investor who doesn't have a ton of assets, because, the fact of the matter is that's the majority of who we talk to every day. Uh, Sad number, but most people will never really get out there and do anything. That's a shame. They could, but they won't. But if you're getting started and you're planning on doing some stuff, there's no sense in spending thousands of dollars setting up stuff you may never
Right.
use
Right.
or will use in a limited capacity. So what are you going to advise a new investor to go out and do that doesn't have a ton of money and wants to do it themselves? Just the minimal steps to get this thing up, get an active LLC that'll protect you if you get sued. Step one is
Step
to
one
go to the
is
state
decide.
website.
Yep. They decide what they want to do. Okay.
Mhm.
They do have a decision to make. All right. Which goes back to, they can go to the state Secretary of State's office. They can fill out the form themselves.
Mhm.
They can pay the filing fee, and the state will send them articles of organization.
Right. And
If
you
they,
said
if
some
they
important tips there are to file as the organizer if you're given the choice.
right,
Okay, that's
file as
key.
an organizer, and also file as a manager if you can do it that way.
Right. And to have a registered agent
Right. Now
instead
that
of
was
your
that yeah, and that's what I was going to go to next, right?
right.
If you can find someone to act as your registered agent, a friend or somebody like that, and put their name and address on there, that's fine. Okay.
Mhm.
However, if you don't want to get a friend and pull them into it, then I would recommend that you go to Incfile, Incfile, go through the process with them, let them set your LLC up. They'll send you the same articles of organization, and they will act as your registered agent. And it won't cost you any more than if you set it up yourself at the Secretary of State's office,
Right.
because you have that first year of registered agent for free.
Mhm.
Okay. Then at the next year, if you don't want to pay them that $125 to renew them being your registered agent, you just change the registered agent.
Mhm.
You can do that the next year.
Right.
So those are the two choices. Yes, you can go and do it and set it up yourself. If you want the most anonymity, then go to Incfile and have them set it up for you and pay them. Do not take the upsells. They have like the regular package, then they have a silver package, then they have a
Mhm.
platinum package, and it looks great because it's got all these forms and stuff that they want you to think that you have to have. You
Right.
don't. Just take the
Right.
very basic one, which is just the state filing fee. So if you
Right.
were in California, it would cost you $800 to file. It would cost you $800 if you did it yourself. You're in
Right.
Tennessee, it's going to cost you $300. It costs you $300 if you did it yourself.
Right.
Okay.
So basically they do it for free. You just have to pay the state filing fee that you'd pay yourself if you went online to do.
That's right. That's
Okay.
why I think that's the better option if
Okay.
you don't have somebody who's going to act as your registered agent.
Okay. And that because they actually act as your agent.
They act as your agent,
Okay.
and you use their address.
Okay. All right, cool. All right. So let's say you go to Incfile, you get all that set up because then you don't have to worry about a registered agent. You pay your fee. And next step.
Next step would be to get an EIN number.
Right.
That's the federal identification number. That's very easy to get, guys. You just go to irs.gov. Okay.
Right.
Now, if you Google EIN number, okay, don't do that, because usually there's a bunch of people that'll pop up that they'll get your EIN number for
Right.
you, but they're going to charge you.
Right.
Okay. You want to make sure that you are on the IRS site. So you go to IRS, and then on the IRS site, there's a search bar. You put online EIN, and it'll take you right to the application. You fill the application out. You get your EIN number.
Right.
Okay? There are places that'll do it for you. If you don't know what to fill out. And some people don't. You have to be careful when you're filling it out and make sure you take the right elections on there, and you say that you're filling out the right form. So if you're not sure how you fill out the EIN number, there are people who will walk you through that process. Okay, it's not that complicated. Most people can go right through it themselves.
You can call the IRS and talk to somebody on the phone and do it over the phone. And I don't know how long the whole times are now.
I wouldn't advise trying to do that these days. Okay, because the wait is kind of long, right?
Yeah.
But you can actually Google how to fill out EIN, and there are a lot of places that there's YouTube University will show you how to fill out an EIN.
Right. Okay. So we've gone through IncFile. They've set up our LLC for us absolutely free, except for the state filing fees that you pay anyway. They're acting as our registered agent, 100% free. We've got our EIN number in the works.
Now you need an operating agreement.
Right.
Okay. Now you need an operating agreement. You can get boilerplate operating agreements anywhere. This, guys, is where I would recommend you either get a boilerplate, tweak it yourself, and have somebody review it for you, or you go and you have someone do an operating agreement for you.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that's something that you're going to want to do on your own. However, here's the nice thing. Once you have one done, it's kind of like copy paste for all your rest of your LLCs, just changing the name.
Right. And I will actually look, because they're all over the place. I think I've got at least one specific to real estate investing that I'll upload in the files here.
There you go.
In the forum today. Again, as Bill said, you may want to have that looked at. You may want to, give Bill a call and talk to him about that sort of thing. I know he does consultations and does coaching and whatnot.
That's one of the first. Yeah, that's one of the first things I review, even with my tax strategy clients. The program that I have for tax strategies, that we review the operating agreement and make sure your butt's covered, because people don't think about it. It actually is a tax document as much as it is a legal document, because it spells out how the LLC should be taxed.
Right. So, but in your opinion, if you just had to be brief on it, the most important thing in that operating agreement is going to be how you want to be perceived as conducting business.
Yes, absolutely. That business purpose is one of the major clauses that you have in there. They also talk about what happens if you die and how the LLC is dissolved. Well, that's pretty much boilerplate. It comes straight from the act. Another thing, I can't remember who it was. Somebody asked, what do you think should be in the operating agreement?
Right.
Okay. If you will go to the Limited Liability Company Act for your particular state, okay, it'll give rules and regs of how your LLC is going to be operated, and you just look and make sure that your operating agreement talks about those things, right? Because it has to conform to the state's act. The only thing that's not mentioned in the state's act as to how it's treated is your business purpose.
Okay, so we've set up our articles with the company. They're a registered agent. We got our EIN number. We've got a operating agreement that has been prepared properly. What's next?
Annual minutes.
Okay.
And there are people who say, well, Bill, my state doesn't require annual minutes. Yeah, fine. What happens when the IRS asks for them? Because they will. If you're ever audited, the IRS will ask for, we say they ask for operating agreements. Lender asks for operating agreements. Lender does not ask you for minutes. Most other places don't ask you for minutes. If you're ever sued, the opposing attorney will ask to see your minutes to make sure you're in compliance. And the IRS would ask for your minutes. It does not have to be quarterly, although I suggest that sometimes it is, because that helps document what you've been doing tax-wise during the year. Okay, annual minutes will do it.
And a really good idea to remember to do that, put it on your calendar and go out for a nice dinner with any other members in your LLC and talk about it, document it, write off the dinner, and there you go.
And here's the thing, guys. If you document things purposefully, okay, Members can have meetings frequently. They can have monthly meetings. Monthly meetings don't have to be held at the business location. You can have a monthly meeting at Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, right? Or Salt Lake City, or skiing in Colorado, any of those types of things. And that makes those trips deductible if you document them properly. Okay. So, you know, it gives you tax protection as well as other things. So there are a lot of tax benefits of treating your LLC like a business. And that's the most important point. When you set up a business, you need to treat it like a business. And this is one of the ways that you show that you are doing that.
Okay. I think one thing that we also need to get done in here after we get that EIN is opening that business account.
Business bank account. Right.
Okay. Business bank accounts. Okay. What's next? Okay. What do we got? We got set up. We got an EIN. We've got our business bank account. We've got an operating agreement. We're making sure that we're doing annual minutes, preferably quarterly. Okay. And
quarterly kind of comes with how much activity you're doing, right? If you're buying and selling a lot of properties, the first quarter, you probably want to have a quarterly meeting because you can document what you did. The worst thing that happens when I'm talking to some clients is at the end of the year, I say, okay, now what activities did you do during the year? What properties did you buy? Why did you buy those? Why did you sell those? And they're trying to reconstruct it all. If you've done that quarterly, it's already taken care of.
Right.
Okay? Gotcha. So that's why I say quarterly. Some get by with just annual because they're not doing a whole lot. Right?
Okay. And then also, and you mentioned this earlier, is making sure even in states that don't require your annual fee to maintain your LLC, they usually do require some sort of report to be filed.
Yep.
And if you don't do that, they'll shut you down. You know, you'll be inactive. So you want to make sure that you're doing that on an annual basis. I say put that stuff on your calendar so you see that it's coming up.
Right. And usually in most states, they always come up at the same time because most LLCs have a 12/31 year end.
Right.
Okay. And the annual reports and things like that are usually due within 3 to 4 months after the close of a year.
Okay. All right. Let me, and that'll pretty much keep you in compliance. And I would going into, and this gets over into some other stuff. We're going to bring someone on to talk about here in the next week or two. And that's business credit. That's another thing that's a big deal. I think this is a fine time to go ahead and get your D&B number for your business. It's totally free, and it's not even related to an LLC. But while you're getting your EIN, you can go ahead and get a Dun & Bradstreet for your business. And if you can start to try to set up a couple of accounts for your business. Now, like I said, I don't want to get too far over into the business credit thing, but here's a fact, and then we'll move on to something else. If you have horrible credit, your new business probably isn't going to be very successful in getting credit right away, because a lot of that's going to depend on you personally in the beginning, at least.
Right.
You find that to be the case?
Yeah, usually. But I will tell you that there have been some people who don't have really great credit, and they have been able to build a business credit that is better than their personal credit. But like you said, it takes a little longer. If you can go in and you can get a business credit card in your own name with a personal guarantee, you can do it very quickly.
Right.
If you don't have good credit and you want to get a business credit card, you have to do some building first. And by building, we say you need so many trade lines, like 30-day accounts, like at Office Depot or Quill or somewhere like that. And it's a steady process. But as you get those trade lines and they report, you start getting a better and better credit score until you can actually get a credit card in the business name without a personal guarantee.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But do these steps, and we'll post those under this as well, what the steps are that we just talked about that you need to do. So what's the name of that company again, Bill?
It's Incfile, INCFILE.
Incfile.com?
Yes.
Okay. And remember, guys, you're paying them the state fee. That's it. They're not charging anything else. There's no affiliate commissions here, anything else. We don't have a link for you to go to. You just go to that website.
That's right.
Okay? All right. No affiliates here. And, you know, and that's going to be the least expensive way for you to get this thing set up.
Right.
Let's try to go ahead, Bill.
And I like it because they don't charge you for being the registered agent for that first year, which makes it nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then by the end of the first year, if you have some, I mean, if you want to convert it, you can, if you can't afford to pay or whatever the case may be, but $10 a month is pretty cheap really to have somebody else taking care of that for you. Okay. Sam says multi-member LLC. How do you assign a second member without a K1 on them? I think I heard Bill mention a personal property trust as a second member.
Yep. You can have a personal property trust as a second member. What you would do is you would give the personal property trust a K1 for their percentage interest. Okay. And then however that personal property trust files its tax return, it would report that income on its tax return. Okay. So with personal property trust, usually the beneficiaries, if there's any income in there, the beneficiaries have to report that income. Right. So it would flow, Sam, exactly like it does anywhere else. So if the personal property trust is a partner in your LLC, then the K1 would go theoretically to the trustee, right? But remember, trustees flow that income down to the beneficiaries.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. Facebook user, what's your opinion of Dun & Bradstreet to help with business credit? I think we just mentioned that you get a number.
No.
Agree with that?
No, he's saying help you. Dun & Bradstreet has a service where they say they will help you build your credit.
Oh no, you don't need that.
That's just like going to one of these services to get your articles of organization set up, and they try to sell you everything else that you need in there. Yeah,
just get your number. It's
just
free.
Nothing but the number.
Yeah, that's all you need. Okay. Tammy said, when I pay for LLC yearly, isn't the questions they ask the annual report? Or is that something else? I'm not sure exactly what she's talking about.
I'm not sure exactly what she's talking about.
Okay. Let's get a little more clarity there, Tim. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm doing the annual report.
Oh, okay. I think she probably is doing the annual report. If she files with them and has to pay something every year, that's probably the annual report.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Mark says Jeff Smith has been one of my favorite trustees. I know it's some excellent nuggets this morning about a lot of details people either don't know or pay attention to. The devil's in the details. I have been audited.
Yep.
Ugh.
I feel
Matt said, I have that in my wholesale contract. It has a clause saying I purchase for profit.
Please don't get me started. All right. So yes, Matt, that's exactly what I mean. I have said so many times before that if you have a clause in your purchase and sale agreement that says, I am buying this property to buy and sell for a profit, you are immediately classifying yourself as a dealer, because an investor holds a property for appreciation and income. They do not buy and sell it for profit.
Man,
now, we all want to be profitable, but that's one of the silliest clauses I've ever seen in my life in a contract.
Why is that in a purchase and sale agreement, Matt?
Oh, William, that's been in purchase and sale agreements for years. And depending on which guru gave you your purchase and sale agreement, it's in there a couple of times.
I've never seen that.
Oh, I have seen it.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow. Really?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
But you don't do a lot of wholesaling, bud.
No, I don't.
That's why.
I don't do wholesaling. Let's see. Matt said, I was talking to a real estate attorney and mentioned I want to start creative for passive income. He mentioned starting an LLC for active and separate for passive. Do I need to do separate? Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah. All right, Matt. So basically what he's giving you is the old saying that we have, you know, a S corp for flipping and a partnership for holding, right? That's basically what he's saying. I think it's good sometimes to keep active and passive income separate, especially if you're doing a whole lot of wholesaling, stuff like that. That said, there are ways that you can kind of convert some of that active income over into passive income by using some of those reasons for selling property quickly. Okay. But if you are definitely doing nothing but wholesaling and assigning contracts, there is no way to get out of the active, and that should probably be run through a separate LLC. I would agree with that.
That said, my attorney put it there. Oh my goodness.
Well, man, that just goes to show you that some attorneys know diddly squat about taxes.
All right, let's see. Mark said, Matt said, oh, okay, we've already had that. Let's see. Schedule C and Schedule E are highly audited. That's a good nugget there. Plus, make sure that you're not a single member LLC. And we'll have to review this again. Yes, a simpler K1 is better. Hey, Rainey, let's see. She's got a comment here. This is so perfect. Not sure what you're talking about, but it is. It's all great information. Janice said, you suggest having the LLC as a single member. And I think Bill's already said he doesn't like single member LLCs. That's what
unless it's being treated as an S Corp.
Okay. S Corp election. Kevin, Ink File sends you reminders on annual report due also. Okay.
All right. That's good.
So there you go. Matt, my attorney, put it there. Let's see. Mark says, well, we just have the LLC be a dealer making a flipping profit, and a second LLC is the hold investor and always open to learn a better way. Okay.
Yep. That and Ray, that's the way that most of it's done, right? And that's what who was it? Was it Matt talking about having an LLC for active and an LLC for passive? That's kind of what he was talking there too. And if you're doing a bunch of wholesale deals, okay, and you've been doing a lot of wholesale deals, and you're already kind of showing that in a reporting process by Schedule C's or something like that, if you try to switch immediately, that's not always real good. You want to make it a gradual transition from what's clearly a dealer status to the idea of an investor who's selling a few properties every now and again to make, repairs and set up an emergency fund, that type of thing. So you have to be very strategic about it. But I always agree with what I consider to be like the trifecta type thing. And by that, you have you or a family trust, a living trust at the top of the scale, and then a left side, a right side, right? Reminds you of the old Amway thing when they were drawing circles, William. I know you.
Oh, yeah, the big whiteboard. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you have you at the top, and then you have an active side for income and a passive side. And I recommend that you have a holding company for active and a holding company for passive. And then you might have several other different smaller companies underneath those, depending on what you need for asset protection and wealth building.
Okay, awesome. Okay, guys, just a reminder, we are not giving legal advice today. This is all based on over 60 years of experience, I think we've determined. So this is for informational purposes, for entertainment purposes. So take it as you will. You can save some money. You can do it yourself. There are some important steps you need to follow. And like I said, I'm going to post those again right below this, what the steps are that you need to take to set up your own LLC. Before we came on today, and for you guys that have hung around, we've still got a bunch of people on here. Bill is doing a few more consulting sessions, and that's just for the people on here today. If you want one, you can contact Bill at billwalston.com. Make the subject line Goat Talk. Okay, if it doesn't say that, he's not going to accept you and schedule an appointment with you. So if we've totally confused you today, go talk to Bill about it, get a little bit more clarity on it, and he can help you get this stuff figured out. So any final words to everybody today?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
You've let me ramble a lot.
Well, I think it's been helpful. Listen, guys, there's nothing wrong. Some things you have to pay for. It's a fact.
Yeah.
You have to, if you order a course today, and it doesn't matter whose it is, mine, anybody else's, you need to have all of your documents reviewed by the attorney in your state that's going to say, this is okay. You better not do this here. You're going to get in trouble. Always, always, always do that. Some
Exactly.
things you can do yourself.
Yep.
And
And some things you can have done more cheaply than what
Mhm.
other people might charge you for it.
That's
Okay.
right.
Because, old saying is the labor's worth is higher, right? You
Mhm.
don't, some people do this for business. I do tax consults and stuff as a business. I charge for those.
Right.
Probably not as much as some other people may
Mhm.
charge for some of the
Right.
same stuff. So that's what you kind of got to look at. By the way, guys, I'm not saying that I'm charging for these that we're scheduling here. Okay?
Right.
But that's my business. That's what I
Right.
do.
Right.
And yeah, you're going to pay for stuff. Just make sure that you're not overpaying for stuff. Make
Yeah.
sure that you're not paying for stuff that you don't need.
Mhm. That's right. So that's why we're having this today. I want to educate you guys on that. You can set this stuff up. It's not super complicated to do. Everybody thinks like sub 2, for example, sub 2 so complicated. It's really not. It's a conversation between an investor that wants to buy a house and make a little money, a seller that needs
Seller
to
wants to
sell for
sell.
some reason. You come to an agreement, you take over payments. It sounds super complex, but it's really pretty simple once you get down to it. So anyway, we've gone over just a little bit. We appreciate y'all hanging out with Bill. As always, we appreciate your knowledge and your help here today. So you guys, if you want to talk to Bill more about this, he's agreed to talk to some of you guys on the call today. Go to bill@billwalston.com. I don't know how many spots he's got, but I'm sure they'll fill up. So make sure the subject line is Goat Talk.
Yep. I moved those guys to the top of the list.
There you go. So okay, y'all are priority. Y'all get to go to the first class line, like at the airport. You know that line
That's
everybody
right.
wants to get in. They
Go
board you
through
first. And do all
TSA,
that.
right?
That's right. All right, guys.
Everybody gets through, but some get through faster.
That's right. Well, thanks, Bill. We appreciate you.
Good thing.
Appreciate you as always. Okay. Okay, guys, that is it for this episode of Goat Talk. We really appreciate y'all coming and hanging out with us. If you have any questions about LLCs, Bill has said that he would help some of you guys out. So check him out. Go to bill@billwalston.com. Use Goat Talk as the subject line. We'll be back next week. So until then, get out there, talk to some sellers, and buy some houses.